Have you ever been fishing and felt that strange sensation? Like you weren't entirely alone. That a quiet day by the water could turn into something much, much darker. Tonight, we're diving into 3 true fishing horror stories that will make you think twice before casting your next line. These aren't just tales of the one that got away. These are stories of encounters you'd be lucky to escape from. So, grab your gear, settle in, and let's head out into the deep, dark water. Story 1. The Figure on the Ice. Our first story comes from a man named Mark, an avid ice fisherman in northern Minnesota. One winter afternoon, he drove his snowmobile far out onto a massive, frozen lake, miles from the nearest shore. The air was still, the sky a dull gray, and the only sound was the wind whispering across the ice. He drilled his hole, set up his gear, and settled in for a peaceful day. Hours passed. As dusk began to settle, painting the horizon in shades of purple and orange, Mark noticed something odd. Far across the ice, a dark figure appeared. It was too far to make out details, but it was walking, slowly and deliberately, straight towards him. At first, Mark thought it was another fisherman, maybe someone in need of help. But as the figure got closer, an unnerving feeling crept over him. Its movements were wrong. It walked with a strange, jerky gait, and it never seemed to get tired despite the vast distance. Mark shouted a greeting, but the figure didn't respond. It just kept coming, its pace unchanging. Panic began to set in. This was no friendly fisherman. The sun had almost vanished, and the figure was now close enough for Mark to see it was tall, unnaturally thin, and dressed in dark, tattered clothing that seemed to flutter in the windless air. But the worst part was its face or the lack thereof. It was just a smooth, pale expanse of skin under a ragged hood. Pure, primal fear took over. Mark scrambled to pack his gear, his hands shaking so badly he could barely function. He threw everything onto his snowmobile, not daring to look back, and gunned the engine. He sped across the ice, the machine's light cutting a frantic path in the darkness. Feeling the chilling presence of that silent, faceless figure watching him go, he never went ice fishing on that lake again. Story 2. The Whispers from the Riverbank. Next, we head to a winding river deep in the Appalachian Mountains. 2 friends, Josh and Ben, were on a multi-day fly fishing trip, camping by the river each night. On their second evening, after a long day of fishing, they sat by their campfire, sharing stories as darkness enveloped the dense woods around them. That's when they first heard it, a soft whisper, carried on the breeze from the opposite riverbank. It was indistinct, like a radio, tuned between stations. They dismissed it as the wind rustling through the leaves. But the whispering continued, and it started to sound more and more like a human voice, faint and pleading. They called out, thinking someone might be lost or injured. The whispering stopped. A heavy silence fell over the forest, so absolute it was more unsettling than the noise. A few minutes later, it started again, this time closer. It sounded like a woman, her voice filled with a desperate sorrow. Goosebumps crawled up their arms. They shone their powerful flashlights across the river. But the beams revealed nothing but a thick wall of trees and tangled undergrowth. The whispering grew more intense, circling their campsite. It was no longer just from the riverbank, but seemed to come from all directions at once. It felt like they were surrounded. They could now make out words, fragments of sentences that made no sense, overlapping in a chilling chorus. Terrified, Josh and Ben abandoned their campsite, leaving their tent and all their fishing gear behind. They hiked through the pitch-black woods for hours, guided only by a compass and the sheer will to escape the haunting voices. They eventually stumbled onto a dirt road at dawn, exhausted and shaken to their core. They never found out what was whispering in those woods, and they have no intention of ever going back to find out. Story 3. The Thing Beneath the Kayak. Our final story takes us to the coastal waters of Florida. A woman named Sarah loved to kayak fish in the mangrove estuaries. One calm, overcast morning, she paddled into a secluded network of mangrove tunnels, a place she knew well. The water was still and murky, the silence broken only by the gentle dip of her paddle and the occasional cry of a seabird. She cast her line near a submerged log and waited. Suddenly, she felt a powerful tug on her line stronger than any fish she'd ever hooked. She fought with it for several minutes, the rod bending almost to its breaking point. She was sure she had a record-breaking catch. As she reeled it closer to the surface, she saw a shape emerge from the murky depths. It wasn't a fish. It was pale, long, and disturbingly human-like. She saw what looked like a slender, webbed hand with long, spindly fingers break the surface and grab her line. Sarah screamed and dropped her rod in shock. The hand and the arm attached to it slipped back beneath the water, but it wasn't over. A moment later, something large and heavy bumped hard against the bottom of her kayak, lifting it partly out of the water. Bump, then again, harder this time. Bump, bump. She could feel a slick, leathery skin scraping against the plastic hull right beneath her seat. She was trapped in the narrow mangrove tunnel with whatever was in the water. With adrenaline coursing through her, she paddled frantically, her paddle strokes clumsy and desperate. She scraped against the mangrove roots, not caring about the scratches, just needing to get back to the open water. She didn't stop paddling until her kayak hit the sandy shore of the main channel, her heart pounding in her chest. She never saw what was under her kayak, and the memory of that pale, webbed hand is something that still haunts her nightmares. From the frozen wastes to the whispering woods and the murky mangroves, the world of fishing holds more than just fish. It holds secrets. Thank you for joining me for these chilling tales. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the unknown. Stay safe out there.